Genshin has been around for a while now, and if you've been playing the game for as long as I have, you may start getting a little bit tired from playing it. At least I am. But recently, a great idea came to me that I'd like to share with you guys. As most of you know this already, but for those who don't, Genshin is an open world action RPG. But what if in some distant parallel universe, it wasn't that? What if instead of Genshin being the action RPG game we all love and hate at times, what if it was something completely different? What if Genshin was an entirely different genre? Something similar to roguelikes, to be specific. Well, I've done some thinking, and I managed to envision a prototype of sorts. Now, a change this drastic would certainly cause some problems, and I'm sure you have questions such as, how would the gacha systems work? Or, how would the constellations work? What about the characters and the lore? Among many more. And all of those and more will be answered in this video. Now yes, I am aware of the event that took place back in 2.2 named Labyrinth Warriors, whose gameplay closely resembles that of roguelikes quite a lot. However, what I will describe in this video will not resemble the event, if at all. Now one last thing before we get started, if you like what you see, make sure to like the video and subscribe, since only a small percentage of you are actually subscribed, and it means the world to me if you did that. And you can always unsubscribe there if you change your mind. Now, before we get into the video itself, we need to understand what we'll discuss, namely, what exactly is a roguelike. Now, Wikipedia describes the genre as follows. Roguelike is a subgenre of role-playing computer games traditionally characterized by a dungeon crawl through procedurally generated levels, turn-based gameplay, grid-based movement, and permanent death of the playable character. However, if you're familiar with roguelikes and snuck a peek or two at different communities, you'll see that there are a lot of disagreements when it comes to characterizing games such as Hades or Dead Cells as roguelites, or no rogues at all. So instead, for the sake of this video and for simplicity, I'll be using a different definition that I came up with, which is the following. A roguelike is a video game genre in which the player must fight through randomly generated levels in which the player is able to upgrade the character in order to achieve an end goal. Failure to meet this goal means starting from the beginning. Now yes, these two do sound pretty similar, but they are very different. Not only is the second one way easier to digest, but it helps us include a wider variety of games in it. Also, see how I didn't include words like dungeon and permadeath start from zero? I intentionally left them out for a reason we'll get into later. But what you need to know for now is that it's a way more convenient definition to work with, and it'll help us create the gameplay of our roguelike Genshin. One of the challenges I encountered while reworking the gameplay was, well, the gameplay itself. You see, the gameplay of Genshin is heavily focused on it being an open world action RPG. That's without taking into consideration the element systems that make Genshin work so well. How could we possibly turn this game's massive world to only a fraction of what it is, but also make it feel alive and rich at the same time? Well, one of the roguelikes I played quite a while ago was Touhou Blooming Chaos 2. Now, I'm not a huge Touhou fan. I did hear about the series and I have a vague idea of what it is, but that's about it. I got the game because it was on sale and I had nothing better to do with the money I had, so I decided, why not? Honestly, it shocks me how this tiny and incredibly simple game can be so addicting and fun. I've spent more hours than I like to admit playing this silly anime game, which I totally recommend it, by the way. It's about $6 on Steam. Now, why did I bring it up? For one reason. I'm not too knowledgeable about the Touhou universe, but one thing I did notice is the scenery changes that occurs when going to another level. Keep calling them levels, by the way, just get used to it. And no, it's not the boring scenery changes that you see in every other roguelike and the gameplay stays the same. No, it's the layout itself changing to fit the scenery. And not only that, but the gameplay managed to, in a way, fake an open world by scenery alone. Why is this important, you might ask? Well, what if, in this hypothetical Genshin, the gameplay wouldn't take place in domains, and instead it take place across different regions of the map, starting from Mondstadt-esque level, and slowly progressing until you reach Celestia, or even the Abyss. And in each region you play in, you have region-specific enemies themed around that specific region, as well as region-specific architecture and room layout. Other than enemies, we can add another layer of difficulty bars for introducing region-specific gameplay mechanics. We can take Dragon Spine's gold and have it in Dragon Spine and Shesnaya levels, have the chasm be pitch black with only some light sources scattered around that require you to be near them in order to actually clear the rooms. Inazuma's main gimmick could be blocking access to areas of the room for a period of time, similar to how it is in the actual game. Sumeru's level could be split into two parts you could explore. One being the regular forest area that you need to clear to go to the next level, and an optional, way harder pyramid/desert area that's way harder. But in exchange, you get a lot of rewards, similar to Binding of Isaac's alternate floors. Now that we have an idea of what the levels are like, what do you do about the empty spaces? Well, let's add a couple of room variants. Regular rooms could be one of three types. Regular enemy rooms, where you need to kill all of the enemies. Trap rooms, where you're free to leave whenever you want, but to go further you need to dodge traps. And puzzle rooms, where you need to accomplish a task inside the room for the room to be counted as cleared. Tasks such as standing on a pressure plate, lighting up torches or monuments, and so on. And for more variety, we can also combine these room types and have a trap room where you need to reach a pressure plate to stop all the traps and be safe to continue, or a room where you have to figure out a way to reach some enemies on the other side without being hit by traps, and so on. Chest rooms are pretty self-explanatory. In exchange for an item acting like a key, you get your hands on some weapons, artifacts, and even a special currency. We'll get into this currency a little bit later though. Now, what about domains? Well, they both exist and don't exist at the same time. Domains as they are in Genshin wouldn't work. Well, they could work, but not properly. We could have a random domain entrance being a random room that you could enter, do 5 runs of waves of enemies and get rewarded every time. But that's pretty boring, and we don't like that now, do we? So let's rework them a tad bit. We'll keep the rewards that you get at the end, but we'll change the method of getting them. Once entering a domain, you get teleported to a secluded place of the level you're on, and also get given one or more challenges that you need to do while completing one or more rooms. We can add some already existing ones from Genshin, such as triggering superconducting triggers an explosion that damages you. But why stop there? We can even have clear the next room within 1 minute, or get an attack reduction for all of your characters for 5 seconds after sprinting, and many more. And these rooms are regular rooms that are made way harder by these challenges imposed on you. And depending on how well you obey these challenges or how well you play, at the end you get rewarded anything ranging from artifacts, weapons, and even premium gem-like currency that I will be discussing there when we're talking about the gacha rework. The rarities and the amount of everything is, of course, determined by how well you play around these challenges. Universal, constellation, astrological, whatever you want to call these rooms, are a very unique type of room. Maybe not a room per se, more like a section of the map. I won't get into much details about them right now, but please remember them since we'll talk about them later. Now, boss rooms are unique. Unique in the sense that you're not going to just be fighting the boss. You see, I envision the gameplay to be challenging but rewarding at the same time. The type of challenge that tests your knowledge of the game and pushes your skills to their limit. Stuff like more challenging attack patterns, having to use iframes for your dash more often, and so on. Oh, and by the way, when I say skills, I'm not talking about your usual skills of games like FPSs or Minecraft or any other game. But what I am talking about is actually something completely different. The type of skill I'm talking about is one with a direct connection to knowledge. Knowledge of the game itself and what information you can gather. You see, gacha games tend to have a trend of sorts when it comes to gameplay. It's the team building aspect of these types of games. To be specific, it's the challenges and requirements these games tend to throw at you to encourage you to pull for more characters to get past these challenges. It's somewhat similar to Genshin's Parallel Abyss if you think about it. You need to clear difficult levels, but you also need good and powerful characters to clear these challenges. Of course, a bit of strategy is required too. I want to keep this main idea when making the gameplay, and we have 2 ways of going about it. One, have it be similar to Star Rail simulated universe, where the game tells you what enemies you'll be facing and you have to plan accordingly. Or 2, have the level be unpredictable. Have room and enemy variations, different challenges, and so much stuff you gotta take into account. Now, if you ask me, I like the latter more. Why? It requires you to plan in advance and forces you to adapt to different challenges, cause let's be honest, you too will get tired of doing the same thing over and over again with no variation and also using the same characters every single time, right? This way makes the game exciting, but also makes even an experienced player think twice before going to the next level. And yes, we're keeping the 4-member party system that Genshin already has. Finally, we reached the thing everyone's been curious about. So how on earth are we gonna rework the system? Remember the constellation astrological something room that I mentioned in the last segment? Well, that is the place we're interested in. But before I explain what that place is about, I need to tell you about Stardust. No, not this Stardust, but it's something similar. This Stardust is nothing special by itself, you get while playing the game, such as when clearing rooms, when opening chests, completing domains I talked about earlier, and so on. However, you do have a second, rarer type of Stardust. Let's call this Star Matter. This stuff is incredibly difficult to come by. There's only 3 guaranteed ways to get your hands on it. The first is by no hitting the boss at the end of the floor, second is by being domains while respecting the challenges to a T, and third is by being the boss at the desert part of the Sumeru level. There are more methods, but they're reliant on RNG and the chances are low. Stuff like clearing rooms unscathed, clearing rooms in the desert part of the Sumeru level, and so on. Now I have to add that it is possible to get multiple drops at the same time. You can clear a domain while the domain teleporting you to a desert area of Sumeru. However, once you get one drop, the others are additive, and the more drops you get, the less Star Matter is added. Okay, now that we're done with the Stardust and Star Matter, let's get back to what we were originally talking about. The astrology place. Now this astrology room is only accessible after being the floor's main boss. I say main boss because Sumeru level has 2 bosses. This is the place where you can spend your Stardust and Matter. You can spend your Stardust for weapons, low and mid tier power-ups, some essential materials, and can roll for a 3 or 4 star, where you can either get weapons or 4 star characters. Now, Star Matter works similarly. You can choose to spend your high tier power-ups, passive items that only work for the next level, such as revealing a more portion of the map, roll for 5-star weapons or characters, or even get an elemental vision fragment of an element. Now, these element fragments don't only appear in this room, they can also appear randomly while playing. These fragments are used to unlock constellations for characters. For C1 you need 2, and you keep doubling until C6. Now, an important thing to note about anything you can buy is that everything gets progressively more expensive the more you buy, but also the longer you play. So everything starts off being rather cheap in the early game, but gets absurdly expensive near the end of the game. This way, you can't just get a 5-star character and destroy everything, since you do need to power up that specific character that you got. I mean, you could do that. You could get a 5-star and just rip through everything, but you'll suffer later on. So what you really need to do is budget everything you have and plan for future levels. You can choose to have a tough early game, but manageable end game, or an easy early game but encounter problems in the end game. Could also balance these two and have an alright run, difficulty wise. Now, this is probably the hardest thing to come up with that fits the Genshin universe, well, other than the gameplay. So far we've been discussing only the gameplay aspect of this Genshin, but we didn't really touch the story at all. The story, as it is in Genshin, won't really work in this roguelike. Shocker, I know. The main problem is that there's no open world you can travel to and fro in. There are a couple of ways we can go about this. Either A, have no story, B, make changes to the stories so it's not so rich and also not the main focus of the game, or C, have the story as is but have it be locked behind tasks. Now, we're going with the third option for one simple reason. There is another roguelike that does this, that goes by the name Enter the Gungeon. You guys might have heard about it already, but if you don't know what it is about, its story is pretty simple. In a nutshell, you have characters that hate their pasts, and they hear that in a specific dungeon that the game takes place in, there is a special bullet called the bullet that can kill the past. But in order to get their hands on this special bullet, they need to perform specific tasks at each level of the dungeon. Pretty simple, right? And that's the idea I'm thinking about. When playing, you can accomplish optional tasks that help you craft a special item that helps you reach the end of the story. In Mondstadt, to get the first piece, you need to fight the Dvalin. To unlock the Dvalin fight, you need to do something specific, like for example, get a lyre from somewhere or something like that. Rework, you're gonna fight either Child or the god she summoned doing Genshin. Inazuma, either Signora or Raiden. Sumeru is mommy issues, and so on. Now, the game normally ends after completing the base level, which is after Shujna. However, if you have this special item crafted, then you can ascend, quote unquote, to Celestia and play to the final and most difficult level of the game. You might be wondering, okay, that's cool and all, but who's the final boss? Unknown God. Yes, the one you only get to see once. That one. I mean, what would you expect? Like, what's the boss fight like? Pretty much a mix of every single boss you fought up until then. Story bosses, to be specific. Maybe even every single boss in the original Genshin that we didn't include in this roguelike recreation. What about the difficulty? Yes. And after this really difficult boss battle, you finally get to know your sibling and live happily ever after. You know, like every other anime and story cliche, like... Well, that was quite a lot to go through, but we're finally done. I'm sorry if this video took a really long time to be uploaded. Like I think I uploaded my last video 2 months ago. Yeah, I'm sorry for this, but I've been busy. And also, please leave a like if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Oh, and also leave a comment down below. I'd love to know what you guys think or what changed and how different my version is compared to yours. And also, one last thing, don't forget to join my Discord server linked down in the description. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video.